Go. Okay. Hi everybody, my name is Michal Hrušecký and I'm here to present to you today about TNTNet. Let's start with simple question. Have you ever done any web development? Any of you? Okay, some did. And who of you which one, is there anybody whose favorite language is C/C++? Okay, there is an overlap. That's great. That's what I'm going to talk about. So, if you are writing some web service, there are a few obvious choices of the languages. The most traditional one is PHP. Everybody claims that they know PHP and they can write it, and quite some people actually do write it, and quite some of them don't know how to write it, also write it. And there is a syntax that is similar to plenty of other languages. There are actual multiple variants of syntax that you can try, and it's been there a long time. Everybody knows it, but I don't think that many people actually like it. Everybody just use it because that's the choice for the web development. Then one of the famous things that, yeah, I see Hannah approaching. So there's this cool thing called Ruby on Rails, which used to be really cool a few years ago, and some people are still using it. But I'm already too old to learn such a new hipster language. So, and the other part about Ruby on Rails is, thanks to it, it's really easy to start. But if you don't know how to, then you get really messed up in maintaining it. And thanks to that, thanks to the fact that it's so easy to start, quite some people actually, instead of maintaining it, start from scratch again, because it's much easier than to maintain it. And the new cool kid in town is Node.js, and I didn't even try to learn that one. But from what I know, it's JavaScript, and I never really liked JavaScript. So, yeah, those are the obvious choices that you have if you are doing web development. And what about guys like me that got stuck with C, C++? Is there some hope for us? Yeah, there is. It's called TNTNet, and it's web development framework. It has all the classic templating systems that you will find in other web development frameworks. It has a routing map, similar to what Rails does, and it uses C++ as a programming language. So you can use all the libraries that you have in C. You can use them directly. You can use old code that you have written in C++. It has a disadvantage that it has to be precompiled. So you have to compile your web application. Then you will get some shared library. Then you link it to your server, and you've got your web application running. And thanks to the compilation, it's also supposed to be much faster than the other alternatives. When I spoke with one of the guys that are working on it, he claimed that it's even faster than static web pages. But yeah, if you compile all the static assets into the shared library and then just put it there, it has to be. And you can make the output either the shared library that you can link to your web server. It will load it and it will start serving it. Or you can write simple wrapper around it and create executable that you can run, and when you run it, it will start a web server and you can access it. without configuring Apache or whatever. So let's take a look at the templating system that it uses. It's, as in the other cases, it's basically just HTML page, and it has few special tags that you can use to insert code and logic. First ones are pre. These are used to use includes. So as you know, in C/C++, there are these includes. So these belong to pre section. Then you can put in some code that does some logic, prepare data, fetch them from database, do some modifications and stuff like that. That you should put in ECPP tags. It also passes arguments that you get either via get or post. So you can specify in which variables you want to get those arguments. You can get some variables that are used, that are session variables. So you can easily use sessions. And as you probably know from stuff like Rails, there's this nice tag that will output the content of the variable and put it directly into the rendered template, and it will escape all the dangerous characters. And there is also option to do this conditionally. I was speaking about variables. There's plenty of variables that you can have. These variables can have different visibility. They can be visible for just a component of the web page, or they can be visible globally, or just inside the page. And you can also specify how long do you want these variables to live. If you want to have them created for every request and at the end of the request destroyed, or if you want to have them per thread or globally per whole application. So, simple example. This is actual code of simple Hello World application. As you can see, we've got one argument that we can get either via get or post, and it's called name. By default, you don't have to specify types, and default type is string. You can specify, for example, int or something else, and if you do that, then the web framework will try to convert the string to this type and put it in, and if it doesn't succeed it will raise an exception. And in general, they are working quite frequently with exceptions, and if you don't handle these exceptions and they will propagate back to the web server, then you will get some error code on the web server, some 5.0 something. Then we have standard HTML, and if it is non-empty, I would put there the value of the argument, and that's pretty much everything that is done here, except comment. So, and if you want to make standalone application that you can fire up, and it will serve the web server, this is the code that you need to write. As you see, it's catching all the exceptions, and it's something like 4 lines, and you get the web server. But in this case, it's using manual mapping. If we use the provided web server, it's using XML, where are all the routes written. And here's an example. of that. And the mapping works that like that it will try whether these rules match with the request incoming. And if it does, then it will go to, it will try to let it handled by this component. This is actually the web page, and this is shared library. So you can mix multiple web applications in one. And then, for example, here I do some verification that user is authenticated, and I do it only for post, put, and delete methods. And the nice part about this is that you can, at your component, you can say that you did everything that you want, and you don't want to process this request anymore, but it's not processed yet. So the request will go to the out_verify component, and at the end, I will say that I haven't processed it, so it will continue going down, and I just did what I needed to do, like verifying the authentication or setting up MIME type. Another part of this TNTNet ecosystem is a library called TNTDB. Sorry. It's a database abstraction library, and it has a plugin infrastructure, and you can write one code, and then you can interact with SQLite, MySQL, Postgres, or even Oracle database. Everything is same. All you need to do is change the connect string. It has also some really nice features like cached prepared statements or connection pool that you can use, so you don't have to do it by yourself. The library will provide you with connection pool. It has conversion functions for all the basic types, so you can get ints and stuff like that from database easily. It also provides a way how you can extend your own types so they can be loaded from the database. And it has some transaction support. Simple example. There is a connect string. We ask for cached connection, which will try to take a look in the connection pool to see if there is any connection that we can use. And we prepare statement using the cache, and then we execute some SQL queries. And at the end of the scope, when the connection is destroyed, it's not actually destroyed, it's handled again by the connection pool, and connection pool will decide whether to destroy it or leave it open and give it to somebody else. And here is a little example of how to use transactions. Again, with C++, they are using scoped variables. So at the beginning, you create transaction. You do some SQL queries, and at the end, you commit. If you have some errors, if you encounter some errors during these queries, it will raise an exception, and the transaction will get destroyed without being committed, so it will get rolled back as you exit the scope. And both of these libraries are actually using another useful library. I think that it was because they were developing this, and all the independent functions that are not strictly database related or strictly web framework related are put into separate library, which is called CXX tools. and this can be used without TNTNet and TNTDB, and also has quite some helpful function. For example, there is an implementation of thread pool or serialization, which provides the serialization object itself is its specification, specific implementations are. Basically, there is one object that can handle JSON, CSV, XML, and it's all the same API, just in class hierarchy, you use different objects at the end. But you can use all these specification serialization formats the same way. There are some regex matching, there are some configuration file parsing, there is a logger library, and much, much more. And everything is using really nice API, nicely designed, so it's really easy to understand it and use it inside of your project. So, what next? If I got you a little bit interested, you can go to TNTNet.org webpage, or if you install it, it's available in one of the projects in OBS. You can check the man page of ECPP, which is pre-compiler that you can use to compile your web pages. And there is a syntax of all the variables that I was speaking about and all these sections that you can use. So that is all. Questions? Yeah?
We all learned from PHP you can write safe PHP web applications, but it's also very easy to do not. How easy it is with a C language to read user input directly and write not safe interfaces. So user is doing something unsurprisingly and you have a buffer overflow. How type safe, how safe you are. Can you have any opinion about that?
Okay, regarding the famous feature of C, buffer overflows, actually there is a nice talk by Sostrup about how you should write C++, and he says that the best way how to avoid these buffer overflows is using just scoped variables and STL templates, and try to avoid dynamic memory allocation as much as you can. And that way, and it's C++, so you have std string, you don't have to allocate char arrays. You can if you want, but yeah, if you do that, you know that you have to be careful, probably. And with C, you probably know that you have to be careful because you already smashed into stuff before, like in your first Hello World. Okay, some more questions?
Can you maybe like tell us how much do you think this is getting used?
I think it's not getting used that much. That's why I have a talk to show it to you. That's so you nice. Can start using it. But I can tell you that these guys are using it for some company, and they are making company some product with that. I started using it in my free time to write my own web applications that I like to use. And at my work, we are currently using it to develop our project as well.
Which scopes do they have? I mean, are we talking about your personal blog? Or?
What I wrote? Well, I wrote simple application, which is basically a wish list for my Christmas, so people can buy me the presents that I like.
But why don't I know this list?
Sorry?
Why don't I know this list?
Why?
Don't I not know this list?
Yeah, because you never gave me a Christmas present. So
Because I don't know the list.
okay, I will send you the list.
So, in these guys, if you say these guys, I'm obviously thinking of the TNTNet guys. What kind of application is that?
I admit I don't remember. The application that we are writing at work is basically we are writing some application which has to have a REST API, and because all the rest of our application is in C/C++, it's much easier to hook into it with this than to write another abstraction and another layers how to interconnect. So, and we are using, for example, connection to SASL or direct connections to the database that are easy in everything, but we are also using some network connections via protocol, sending messages out and receiving in during processing of the request, which makes it quite easy to do in C/C++.
Sounds awesome.
Okay, some other question? Yeah.
Yeah, I basically have two questions. The first one is how hard is to debug or profile the performance and such stuff. Can you use the common stuff like GDB and Volgrind and such stuff for this? Can you somehow hook? The server processing.
Yeah, I regularly use GDB to run it on backtrace when something crashes. And my colleague is using Volgrind to find out memory leaks that we have. So basically same as any other C/C++ application. You just need to filter out what is done in the framework and what is done by actually.
Yeah, I mean, for example, templates. That's often quite a challenge to debug templates because it's not common C code. It's something that needs to be processed. So if you can see where a template is broken.
Well,
I don't expect that GDB shows you which line in this template is wrong.
it actually, well, this file will get preprocessed and translated into C++, and that gets compiled afterwards. But yeah, I never tried to debug it step by step, but usually how I usually work when I'm developing something is by a combination of helpful printfs and backtrace if something crashes. Yeah, so you can look at the ECPP file, then you will know the line numbers. But if you are raising exceptions or something like that, it will translate the numbers back to the original ECPP file.
Okay, and second question, I do not see much advancement to other modern frameworks except that it's in C++. Maybe it's slightly faster. So if the framework have some new special ability that's not available in other frameworks.
I think it doesn't have anything that would, any special feature that will give it advantage over the other frameworks. Main feature that I like about it is that I can write with C++. That's biggest advantage for me. Otherwise, I think it would be pretty simple to, pretty similar to the other frameworks. Maybe there will be some features missing. If we compare it, for example, with Rails, you wouldn't get all these fancy generators that will write code for you, and you will have to write code yourself.
Okay, that's all.
Okay. Anybody else? No? So, okay. Last question.
When you have an existing application or any server process written in C, that you can use this easily to plug it in as that you have an additional admin interface, for instance, for these kind of processes, so that it's more like an addition to existing software, but not as an. Would it conflict with existing software? Do you need your own scheduler inside, or process handler, or can you easily run it as part of an existing process? That's my question.
Well,
sure if it was clear as a question.
From what I showed there somewhere was that you can basically fire it up as another thread of your existing processes, and then you have to somehow handle the communication between your server application and this part, probably via some IPC.
Okay, but then it makes sense to, for instance, if you want to have a nice web interface in your MySQL server, then to use something like that to provide a nice web interface, an admin interface.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
And thank you for your attention. And if you have some more questions or want to talk to me, I will be somewhere here. And don't forget to drink all the beers, so we don't have to take it back.